Welcome back to another episode of the Reckless Comedy Podcast. This is season 3, episode 7. My guest on this episode tonight was Kelly Zemnickis. And as you'll expect from this podcast, there will be strong language, there will be sexual references, and there will probably be a few rants as well. If you are watching this on our YouTube channel, then please give us a like and subscribe. And if you are listening to this on any other podcast platforms, such as Spotify, then leave us a review. Let us know what you thought of the show. But it's time to roll the interview. Enjoy. Here we go. So Kelly is joining us on the show. Hello, Kelly.
Hello, Kim. If
How?
I had,
Yeah.
I'm wearing right now for listeners, I don't know if folks are just hearing the audio of this, but I've got a bright orange sweater and Kim's got bright blue hair. If we were like merged, we would be a stoplight.
It's amazing. I would definitely be like, I'd be the most useless stoplight ever. I'd just be like, I would judge each car. I'd be like, yeah, go on. Yep, yep. No, not you. You're on your phone.
You'd be a judgmental stoplight.
Probably.
So you'd be a bouncer.
Yeah, probably. Yeah,
Okay.
when you think about it like that, yeah, I'd be like, ID, please. No, no, no.
Oh,
Definitely not, but I'll take a bribe.
that would make traffic even worse in Toronto, which it's surprising it could get worse, but if you need to be downtown, at least where I live, you should have left yesterday. Like
I love that.
it's
I love how like everyone in their own way has some sort of material on like traffic, and it's like here in the UK, it's just like,
yeah.
hello, we created the traffic system, we broke it, we created it and broke it at the same time, which is
Yeah, there's a long running joke in Toronto about this thing we have called the Eglinton Crosstown,
wait,
which
what?
is it's supposed to be an addition to our subway, or if you call it a metro or underground,
Hmm.
it's an extension of that line that I think now is in possibly its 11th year of maybe being finished one day.
Jesus
So
Christ.
I'm thinking my great grandchildren will really enjoy it. I won't be alive to see it finished.
I mean
There's
that's a good thing though, ain't it? It's like, okay, I won't be allowed to see it go to hell even more.
But it would be nice if they did finish it because, like, they've built entrances to a line that doesn't exist.
Yeah,
It's
intriguing.
very Toronto.
Yeah,
I
it's
feel like
very
it's a very
Toronto.
Toronto thing.
If you couldn't tell,
You could
Kelly,
enter here
you
if
could.
we bothered to finish it.
Yeah, if we bothered to finish it, then it'd be a hell of a lot easier for everyone else. But we're just going to
Yeah,
make it awkward for everyone.
yeah, yeah.
So,
No, it's yeah.
Kelly, as a comedian, how long have you been doing comedy now?
As a stand-up, 8 years, but comedy, I started back in the 1990s as a technician for improv shows.
Oh wow,
Yeah. So comedy, it's been since 92, as a stand-up since 2016.
oh wow. So you started comedy about 2 years before me because I started in 2018, and then
Okay.
obviously,
Yep.
so a
Yeah.
lot of fun.
A
Um,
lot of fun, especially as a woman in her late 30s who had never taken a class before, who decided next Tuesday I'm gonna do stand-up. And
oh
I
wow.
did.
I was going to say, what are the comedy origins then, really, for you?
Mine are, I feel like I will, so I'll preface it by saying my story is sadder than I think the majority of people's. I think for most folks it was like you were the class clown, or you
Hmm.
just everyone told you you're super funny, or that kind of thing. For me, my first boyfriend, who I was not involved with, but we had stayed friends the
Hmm.
entire time we knew each other. Essentially, he found out too late that he had cancer. And we had this call in January of 2016 where it was like every card was laid out on the table, and it wasn't said that this was the last time we were going to talk, but that was kind of the feeling I got from it,
Mm,
that I was never going to talk to him again. And he went into hospice about 2 weeks later, and he eventually started to lose his vocal abilities.
mm.
So it was our last chat, and I hung up the phone completely broken. And when I got up off the floor, because I was on my bathroom floor,
Oh, wow.
um, I just looked at myself in the mirror and I just said, go try every fucking thing you want to try, because you can do anything you want to do, and he can't. And so I knew of these two guys in Toronto who were running basically a variety show.
Mm,
And I had teched it on occasion. And the idea of it was, as an artist, you went to go do something that you were not known for. So
mm,
if you were a painter, you'd come on and do an improv set or
mm.
whatever. And I just wrote them. I was like, can I try to do stand up next week? And they said, yeah. And then I had 7 days.
Wow.
And that's what it was. It was just yeah, fucking try it.
I
Just try
think,
it.
I think for me, so how it started for me, we talk about people like being the class clown all the time. Mine, I came from a theatre background first, so I already knew that I wanted to entertain people anyway. And I kind of knew that, okay, I can stand in front of people and get people's attention. Or that's what my brain thought anyway. What my
Right.
brain and what I actually think are two different things. But I remember I came home from, in the UK system, we call it secondary school, which is essentially like year ages, probably 12 to 16, that kind of middle-ish area.
Okay.
So
Okay.
you have primary, which is like the younger, really young years, and then you have secondary, which is then kind of start of adulthood, and then after that, it then goes to college.
Oh,
And I just come home from one of my last exams, and I already knew I felt like a failure with those exams. So I was like, right, okay, I need a career of some sort. And I saw an advert for a local open mic, which was about 20 minutes away from me at the time. And I got my granddad at the time. I told him, just drive me to this venue. He's like, why? Just drive. Just drive there. And normally,
sounds safe.
yeah, it's like, I'm not telling you where, just go.
Just drop me off in this alley.
Yeah, just drop me off in this back alley. I promise I'll get home in time. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, most open mics in the UK at the time, it's slightly changed now. They're normally, don't know if it's like this in like Toronto, but it's like you have to be like 18 or 21 to actually just perform there. It was very much
Okay.
like adults only. And I
Right.
turned up there and I just spoke to the guy who's running the open mic and I went, look, I'm 16. I want to try comedy. Any chance I can jump in? I know what the rule is, no worries if not. And he
Yeah.
looked at me and went, I'm going to give you an exception on this one occasion. And if you can make me
Uh,
laugh, then you can come back as many times as you want. So I went in there and I was shitting a brick. I'm not going to lie. I had the shake so bad at that moment.
oh, me.
And
Yeah. I
I've
thought my heart was going to collapse. Yeah.
honestly, like walking down onto the stage in this room, there was only like 20 people in the room plus 10
Yeah.
comics. And
Yeah.
the way I was walking, I genuinely looked like I was drunk because I was shaking so much. Like it looked like I was just out of my head before I'd even got there. And you're on a good track comedy wise is if the first thing that comes out your mouth is an instant laugh. That is what
Right.
it was like. I think I just looked at the audience, went, ah, shit, it's this lot. And instant laugh straight away. I had nothing planned. That's the thing. I didn't
Yeah.
plan anything. I just did.
Oh, you didn't?
No, I
Oh.
just went up there and said whatever came into my mouth, which isn't always
Okay.
a good idea. Take note, comics. It's not always a good idea.
It can work some days, and it can, but that's like also written material can work some days and not the
I mean,
others.
we've got a lot of experience with that, I think, especially
Yeah.
with like the
Yeah.
online scene. So
Yeah.
obviously,
Yeah.
you had started comedy before COVID. What was it
Yeah.
like when COVID hit and comedy had to kind of shut down and go online?
I I remember for Toronto, I can't think of what week it was in March, but I remember I had shows booked in like Montreal, just like open mic things,
Hmm.
nothing fancy. And I had an opportunity to do a set in New York City
Hmm.
at this club called Broadway Comedy Club. And I just recalled like a day where I went through as if it was a black and white film with like a tiny violin
Yeah.
crossing all these things off my calendar, like, plunk, plunk. And I genuinely, I took a moment to genuinely think, fuck, is that it? I only got to do this for 4 years? Like, that's it? Did I did I do enough? Now, in the same breath, where I was at the stand up, I genuinely did feel kind of stuck with
Hmm.
my set and my material. And like something just wasn't working
Hmm.
right, but I couldn't quite figure out what it was. And I'm very much a person who just does a thing and learns by doing, which sometimes can teach you bad
Hmm.
habits and sometimes it's good. But I was always getting out there and trying stuff, but there was something that just wasn't right. So I was like, oh, maybe this is time to throw it all in. And I had joined I joined a group, a comedy club Facebook page from New York, thinking when I was going to be in New York, I'd go try a mic there.
Hmm.
And then they ended up being the first virtual show I did because they put a post out of like, we're going to do a mic online. I was like, well, I don't know what this fucking is, but I have to tell a joke to somebody.
Yep.
So I was like, why not? And then that was end of March 2020. So I went from just thinking, okay, well, there goes everything I've thought might be the next path in my life to, oh, okay, I can keep writing things and I don't know what's going to happen next. So, what about you? What was the vibe like where you were?
So my last gig before the lockdowns happened was
Yeah.
February of 2020. And
Hmm.
a couple of days into it, I'd started feeling a little bit like unwell. Now, whether that was just normal, like
Same here.
changing of the
January
season,
20.
it
Yeah.
was like that. So I was like, but it was starting to make its way over into the UK at this point. It was raging through Europe at the time. So it was like, okay, I don't think it's this, but it might be. Obviously, at the time, there was no testing to say what it was.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it was kind of like, I remember very vividly the day of the gig, I was bedbound. I couldn't eat. I couldn't do anything. I didn't have enough energy
Yeah.
to even stand up on my own legs, let alone that 6 hours from then, I would be attempting to stand up in front of people for 10 minutes. So
Mm.
I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, it's got me. Shit.
That's interesting because, like, looking back, I was violently ill with what felt like an elephant sitting on my chest at the end of January.
Mm.
I'd come back from doing shows in Thunder Bay, Ontario, and I was going to Montreal. I was actually on my way to the train station. I was like, I'm not, I gotta can. I wonder if I had COVID. I don't know, but I girl was not good. So,
That was the same with me. I got to the gig and I just remember
oh,
it got worse because I was with my brother at the time and we went out, like had a drink beforehand. And I just remember I was in this restaurant and I just started coughing my lungs up. I was like, this is not normal. Even for me, when I get ill, I never cough this much. And I just
mm.
remember I was literally corpsing in the worst way possible in this venue. And I
And
was
you
like,
still did the
I
set?
still did the
I
set
would have, I went home, buddy.
at this point, I was like, I look back on it in hindsight and gone, yeah, I should have gone home at that point. I should have thrown the towel
Yeah.
in. But I think it was a case of I weren't the only one coughing our lungs up in there as well. So it was kind of like it felt like a lot of us were ill around the same time. And this is the thing: none of us expected that less than 6 weeks later we would be shut
Oh,
down.
oh, it was. it was wild. It was such a, and some folks did shows in parks here in Toronto when we weren't supposed to be socializing at all. I didn't go out and do any of that because I was just terrified of being around people, really.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, no, I'm quite a champion of it. If you don't feel well, get the fuck out of here.
And yet there's me who's just like, yeah, I'm coughing my lungs up. I'll still be fine.
Oh, that for those who have never had the pleasure, and I use the word loosely, of smelling a mic that is on, that is a petri dish.
Jeez. Yeah.
When they brought out those little mic covers, which folks were using here a great deal in Montreal and New York, I kind of really dug it because I'm like, this thing's disgusting and smells terrible.
I love that. I think in the UK, when we started utilizing that as well, I think we just ended up calling them like microphone condoms, which was
Yeah,
funny as hell.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
it then gave every comedian at least an extra couple of seconds of material just to
Oh,
play on the idea of, even here I can't get it on.
yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, like, oh, it's been a while since I've done this. Like, yes,
But yeah, obviously COVID was, I think, for some people a blessing. Like not literally, but like for comedians, I
right.
think for comedians it was kind of a blessing that we didn't realize, because there's quite a few comics that we know on the circuit who, when they started out, they developed so well thanks to Zoom. And, we were talking before we started about how when
Hmm.
Zoom started, we all thought it was going to be a temporary thing. But now it's kind of become like there's a lot of venues that I know of that will
Yeah,
run a live mic and have it streaming on Zoom at the same time. Something I don't
exactly.
think 2018 me would have seen coming.
Oh, no, absolutely not. I mean, even when it started, I didn't quite know what was going to become of my doing stuff on my computer. But I feel like I'm someone who adapts pretty well to whatever situation I get plopped into. As
Mm.
much as I don't really like change, I'm pretty good with, well, okay. So it's very contradictory by nature, but there was this benefit for me of, and for, folks like yourself or a Toronto comic like Desiree Walsh, um, just the repetition of writing stuff and just saying it aloud. And uh, I love also just how it allowed us to do road work. Like
Mm.
we were saying before we recorded, you and I connecting, if I was just traveling around the world, I may not still have met you yet. And now, if I go to your town or you come to my town, I'll be like, yeah, I've got a spot on the mic, hop on. And it did a nice bit of like work for us. So I kind of like the goodness that came out of it. And I do really feel like virtual continues to be a great writing space. Not so much a performance space, but just a good writing space, which, if the traffic sucks in Toronto, which it does, don't matter what the day, I can do 5 minutes here. And if you give me that bullshit reason of like, oh, you're getting no reaction, I can also go to a club downtown and get no reactions. Doesn't matter.
I've had that so many times where people are like, "Oh, you're doing Zoom comedy, you're not going to get a reaction," and I'm like, I just come back from this club, which is apparently really good, and no
Yeah.
one gave a fuck what I said."
And yeah, it's crazy. And I don't know about you, but I know for me, I was having a chat with friends the other day about this, whether it's something on Instagram or if it's on Zoom or whatever you're using, Twitch. Um, I now look at like reaction things of like hearts and laughing
Yeah,
faces and people like you're muted but I can see you engaging,
yeah.
and I'm reading people an entirely different way. One thing I got to mention, it just came to mind that I totally forgot about. So I've got I've got this baking show called It'll Be Fine. It's on YouTube.
Mm.
A lot of people think I started it during the pandemic, and I didn't. I started it before the pandemic. And this is nuts. I can't believe I forgot about this. But it started in August of 2019.
Oh,
And there
wow.
was a bunch of comics that got together and put a post on Facebook and said, hey, we're going to do this 24-hour comedy festival on Twitch. You can submit a couple of ways. You can come and do stand up in our living room. We're going to live stream it. Or you can do a sketch thing. And I saw this post, and in my head, I was like, why the fuck would I do stand up at home? It's ironic, isn't it, Kim?
It's the irony. Less than what? A couple of months later, you'd be like, well, look who was a dumbass there.
Isn't that crazy? But
It's nuts.
I pitched this idea of a baking show with comics, and that's how It'll Be Fine started.
Oh, wow.
And then a few months later, I was like, I do stand up in my bathroom now.
I love that. Talking
Weird.
about obviously online comedy,
Mhm.
the reoccurring thing with you, like shout out to Desiree for this.
Yeah.
Where did the Uncrustables thing start from? Because I've done so many shows with you and Desiree now, and I'm still confused by the whole Uncrustables thing.
So Uncrustables is fully completely Desiree Walsh's and she brought this to me and thus our the rest of our friend group because she when she started doing virtual mics
Mm.
and Desiree just has a very pure unabashed what's going on with you kind of thing, like she just very
Yeah.
curious and sees things in a way that I do not. And so she latched onto this Uncrustables business, which to those who have never heard of them, it's a frozen sandwich. Like take the sandwich you're making right now, listening to this podcast, and put it in your freezer and cut the crusts off of it. And that's what America brought to Desiree Walsh's attention. So we uh we then started doing and I'd have to go back through our our thread of like how it started, but we started doing a mic called Kelly and Desiree host a booked mic, not yet sponsored by Uncrustables. Our mic is still not sponsored by Uncrustables, but Uncrustables are now in Canada, and every time Uncrustables issues a new flavor, they let Desiree and I know, and I am holding 2 tickets for the new variety that's come to Canada. So
I'm loving
yeah,
this.
yeah, no. So we put things on our socials, and Uncrustables is fully aware. Uncrustables or Smuckers Canada, I guess, is aware that we are such super fans. Um, and we're trying to get them to make us their spokespeople.
I shouldn't laugh because the determination, if it actually happens, like
The fact, so on for a while when we were doing the Uncrustables mic, which we still do, but for a while we kept posting this change.org petition that someone had put together to bring Uncrustables to Canada, that I am sure this person once a month on the second Wednesday of every month was like, why do I have an uptick in signatures? Um, but Uncrustables reached out to me and said, hey, we noticed you really like our products. Can we send you coupons? And then I was like, you need to talk to Des.
it's not
So,
my idea.
so peanut butter and grape jelly are now available in Canada, thanks to Desiree, me, and that change.org guy, girl, person.
We should find out who that like petition guy is and get him on here and ask him how he feels.
I don't know who he is, but I still would like to block Uncrustables from bringing the Uncrustables buttered chicken across the border because that is wrong.
Even in my
Yeah,
head, I'm like, what the fuck?
yeah. So one of our friends in the States, I think it was Aaliyah Brown, sent us a variety pack of the flavors America has made into a frozen sandwich. One of them being butter chicken, which we did this Facebook Live. Desiree and I ate them. I felt sick. And um, it I love butter chicken. I love butter chicken. This tasted like specifically the bun of a McDonald's cheeseburger. Just the
What?
bun. That's
Oh
not
my
butter
God.
chicken.
In my head, I'm like, what the fuck? But then at the same time, I'm kind of like, it's America. It makes sense.
No.
This is the thing. Like, as a comedian, I think, especially an online comedian, I've managed to open doors that, I never thought would have been opened. Like,
For
if
sure.
you had told me like back in 2018 that in a few years' time you're gonna know people in different countries who will willingly have you on a show, I
Yeah.
probably would have gone, no. But
Yeah.
now you look
Oh,
at it now, and I think with online comedy, it's been really fun. I've managed to do things that I never thought I'd been able to do. The podcast
yeah.
started out as that, which kind of was the launching pad for everything that came next. Obviously, I was able
Mhm.
to create a 1 hour show, not just in comedy, but also a show that for some reason I won't let go of. The Carnage series, I won't let go of
Right.
that. I won't let go of
Yeah.
that no matter how much, even though it's now getting staged live. So that's going to be a lot of fun, and also scares the shit out of me to see whether jokes I did on Zoom actually work now in
But
that
when
setting.
folks say that, though, it's like, I think if it's a well-written joke, it shouldn't matter where you're performing it.
Yeah,
I could be wrong. I mean, certainly there's some stuff that maybe, fits the mood of what we're doing in our own homes to a degree, but I think if it's just a good joke, it's just a good joke.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And obviously,
Yeah.
how many Zoom gigs do you reckon you've done over the last few years?
Oh, thousands.
I reckon I'm in probably I started quite late though. I started doing online shows around summer 2020. So I'm
That's when Desiree started, and she's got quadruple the number. She was doing like 8 things a day, and I was like, my eyes can't handle it. Like I was getting like crazy headaches
I think the most
just
I've
from
ever done in one night is maybe 3 shows in one night. And
yeah,
even that, I was like on the third one, I'm like, fuck me, I can't do
yeah,
this anymore.
yeah. Yeah, because it
um,
was like all of my socializing, my family calls, my work, my comment, like everything was like, and my eyes, I have chronic dry eyes, so it was like killing me. So,
and
yeah.
obviously, talking about work, stepping aside from comedy for a bit,
Mhm.
let's talk about No Responders Left Behind. How did that
Yeah.
all come around?
So I'm a also with being a comic, I'm a documentary filmmaker, and No Responders Left Behind is my first doc, which I co-produced. Um, and that came from being a fan, and I still am, of The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. And I was a
Okay.
fan of The Daily Show with, I think Craig Kilborn hosted before John did.
Hmm.
Um, but I was really impressed with John's advocacy about 9/11 first responders as somebody who grew up during that period and was in my 20s when that awful, awful incident happened. And John just kept talking about how their health was and how they were doing after the crisis. And in all honesty, when John left the show and then came back when Trevor Noah was hosting in 2015, months before I started doing stand up, he came back on to do another push and he encouraged everybody to tweet. And so I posted a tweet, and I
Hmm.
think only 5 people saw it, but one of them was a 9/11 first responder. And for no reason that I can logically think of, I wrote to this person and I said, how can I help you guys? I don't know what pushed me to say that. And he said, well, why don't you talk to this guy, John Field? And then John ended up becoming the subject of my doc because he is a 9/11 responder and he is a 9/11 health care advocate. He also now works with like burn pit victims. Um, but I reached out to him and I was just like, I don't know who you are, but I'm very curious about what you've done to help these people and what can I do to help? And it was a cold call. And by the end of the call, I had essentially told this stranger I knew how to make documentaries and I would like to make one about him. And then I called my friend Rob Lindsay, who owns a company called Paradox Pictures. And I said to Rob, how do you make documentaries? And he said, why? I was like, well, I just told someone I know how to make them. So that truly was how that started, of just a pure, unabashed light bulb moment, where this stranger really got to me in a way that I was like, if I don't know who this guy is, then somebody else doesn't know who this guy is. And it was magic. It was real magic of people wanting to work together to tell the stories of how in the years since, these first responders and even just people who were in the New York area at the time that those buildings fell are continuing to get sicker and sicker and sicker. And it is probably not going to stop. So yeah, that was my first film. So, and we started filming 2 months after I started doing stand up for the first time. So I was learning at the same time, having just lost, my guy, how to be a filmmaker and a comic and how to grieve. And 2016 was hands down the year that my life changed. Like,
And
absolutely.
what was the response to No Responders Left Behind?
It's been astounding. In a way that I never could have pictured. But these folks that we made the movie about were really grateful that we did. And then people who heard about the film reached out to us and said, hey, I was in the area at the time that that happened. I've not been feeling well. Do you think I'm suffering from an illness? So we were connecting people
Mm.
that wouldn't have known, and it's done a lot of good things. So I'm really proud of it.
Honestly, I remember you advertising it at the time, and I was thinking, what? Why hasn't this been done sooner? Like,
Well, yeah, and I mean,